the candidate was not eligible. What the electoral law says is that you have to prove beyond reasonable doubt your claim. And we can see what happened in Osun State and how that turned out. But for the presidential, you literally have to provide witnesses in literally all the cases that you, or areas that you say the numbers were not right by INEC. Secondly, you'll be looking at the BVAS and the certified true copies. Thirdly, you'll be looking at the IREV. And I think in the PDP position, they mentioned that INEC could not have had the final score at the time that they announced if all the figures were not uploaded on the IREV. It's going to be a long 180 days. I really do hope that the judgment for live telecast is positive, because beyond the entertainment factor, the truth is Nigerians need to, at the end of the day, whoever is sworn in on May 29th, see that justice has been done to the disputes that have gone in. Right now, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu is the president-elect. So on that basis, we will speak going forward that literally after this general election, the unity which Nigeria claims has been bastardized. It's been torn into pieces on ethnic lines, on religious lines, on even by way of injustice lines. He's going to have to do a lot of work, a lot of hard work to sew in the fabric of this nation, because legitimacy is at stake. So let's keep our ears open. Hopefully, if they do move from their traditional stance of closed door sessions, Nigerians will have an opportunity to really know how decisions are made when those men in wigs put their caps on.
Speaking about these televised tribunals, is there, or are there any concerns that perhaps having this televised could in some way be influenced by public opinion, the proceedings?
Well, I mean, the public is not there, although both PDP and Labour are pushing that the court allows more media persons. Now, there are two ways they can do it. In the usual order, the media is allowed inside the courtroom, and they pick up the stories and then they retell it once the panel session is over. However, what they're asking for is that instead of having to retell the story, they want live broadcast so that Nigerians and the international public are witnessing the whole procedure. Now, some legal analysts have said that usually when courtroom sessions have live broadcasts, that the trial lawyers seem to grandstand more than usual, taking the opportunity, knowing that their positions will garner public sentiments, and that sometimes delays the process or elongates it. But I think, especially now that we're looking at the time that Nigeria is, given the fundamental critical nature of the outcome of this tribunal on the census, and like I said, the legitimacy of the presidential election. I mean, the only reason why he's presidential elect is because INEC, the constitutionally empowered body, gave him a return certificate, okay? Now, some way, somehow, hopefully, I mean, we can't settle that now. We're hoping that the 10th Assembly, when they've gone in, they will find a way to rearrange the sequence, because there's just something wrong about swearing in someone with all the godly powers that the presidential inauguration comes with, whilst that candidature is being disputed.
So, but does that mean perhaps some people would rather everything is put on hold, including inauguration, till the
they debate that it will create a constitutional gap, that there can be no gap. We agree, and that has been the precedence since this democracy came on board. But like I said, sequence, it is possible for them to rearrange it. Remember, even in the elections, there was a time that we did Guber elections first, and then the presidential after. And then at some points we did everything all at the same day. And then they rearranged it again and said, no, presidential first and then Guber after. So the National Assembly, through its constitutional legislative powers, can rearrange this in a manner that, so that we can deal with these things up front before that inauguration is made. Because what normally happens is once that person is sworn in amid the dispute, either at the presidential or the gubernatorial, there's a lack of concentration on governance while they're trying to sort out their court papers, because it could happen that their candidature is upturned, and it could happen that they win, like in the Osun State situation.
All right, Dalvin says, if the tribunal is going to take 180 days, will the president-elect still be sworn in? On
Of course, of course. He's
an emphatic yes.
Don't even forget your sleep about it. He's being sworn in May 29th. That's for sure.
All right, Devoe, you mentioned the Osun State. Let's take a story here from the Daily Trust. Now, the Supreme Court has upheld the election of Governor Ademola Adeleke of Osun State. This was a judgment delivered by a 5-member panel. That's an upheld election in Osun. Lakunle.
Okay, so congratulations to the people of Osun State.
Thank you.
Now we can settle down to the act of governance. We thank God, since February, there had been that distraction of I win, I didn't win. And just like Devoe just said now about the need to get all litigations and all petitions done with before swearing in. Anything that the National Assembly needs to do together happen, maybe in this next assembly, we should consider that as well. There's always this incidence also of, for example, the case in Rivers in 2007, I think, when somebody was sworn in as governor, and 3-4 months down the line, the Supreme Court says, no, you can't be governor. And to date, the person goes around calling himself a former governor, when in law, his election had been said it had been null and void, which means he should not be called a former governor. But today, we are calling him former governor. And also the same thing happened, I think, in Ondo State as well. So, and Ekiti as well. So I think that it is very important that that happens. Now for Osun, I think that it's now time for Governor Adeleke to face the business of governance and deliver on all his campaign promises to the people of Osun. And they will be able to justify all the time and effort and the expectations the people have of his administration. I wish him all the best, and I wish all the people of Osun all the best as well, as they enjoy the next 4 years of Governor Ademola Adeleke's leadership.
I just want to quickly circle back to the presidential election tribunal. We've talked about distractions and so on and so forth. Now, we have a 180-day period. That's about 6 months, and the president-elect is going to be sworn in on May 29th. Now, how much of an effect would this have on Nigeria as a whole in terms of actual governance and distractions? Bearing in mind the major issue that Nigeria has in front of her, how much of this will be a distraction for the incoming government while this tribunal is still going on?
Typically, at the federal level, if we look at precedents, right? Precedents is 1999. Every election except 2015 one had gone to the courts, and none of the elections had been overturned by the courts. So if we go by that sequence, we would say that we should not expect that this one should also be overturned. But is the Supreme Court we're going to, the electoral tribunal, the Supreme Court, we get to the Supreme Court finally, whatever is the outcome, there is still that element of, so what's going to happen? Should I start investing in my business? Should I continue to do things the way I'm doing it? Should I wait and see if the person who wins, his campaign manifesto fits into my plan to do business? Do I want to go and add money in Nigeria? Should I run away from Nigeria? Those things will come up in places. It will affect quite a number of things. We cannot rule out that tentative doubt that things may change from the planned expectations. And it is for the matter that there cannot be a vacuum. That's why May 29th, somebody will get sworn in, right? And so if by September or whenever, or June or July or whenever, the Supreme Court passes a judgment and says otherwise, then that means that we'll go back to 0 and start all over again. And by law, that automatically changes our election cycle. Remember that the precedent that was set in 2005, that the Supreme Court says it is the day an elected governor or it was sworn in that his term, his tenure becomes effective. So which means that the date which, if this is overturned and another person is adjudged to have won the election, that means automatically we have changed the date of swearing in to that new date when that new person will be sworn in. And so those are the kind of dynamics that will affect it. So we cannot rule it out that these things will affect the way our election was. So the best thing is that there should be a window between election and swearing in day when all petitions must have been done with, so that when anybody is sworn in, we know that it is the authentic person by election and by law or by petition that is now in that position.
The WhatsApp number to send your messages to is 0809 440 981. You're listening to Freshly Pressed on Smooth 98.1. Do stay with us. It continues shortly. Documents is just all over the place. I don't know why. The bills by the president are something that will give us from. This doc seems to be no. It's not even on the script anymore. Ava, please, could you unlock for me? Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Smooth 98.1, love music, love life. You're listening to Freshly Pressed on Smooth Breakfast, and you can be a part of Freshly Pressed this morning by sending your messages to us via WhatsApp on 0809 440 981. We're also streaming live on YouTube. That is Smooth 981 FM in Lagos. And yes, we still have Devoe and Lakunle with us, the analyst for the moment, taking a look at the stories going on or making the rounds in Nigeria at the moment. So let's take a story. Let's take a story here from the Punch. Now, the National Security Advisor, Major General Babagana has expressed concern over the spate of attacks on critical national assets across the 6 geopolitical zones of the country.
Sorry, come again.
The National Security Advisor, Major General Babagana has expressed concern.
All right, let's go on to Punch. Senate President Ahmed Lawan says the president gave assent to 104 out of the 162 bills passed to him by the 9th Senate. Now, he declared the 9th National Assembly performed better, and this is the Speaker of the House of Representatives, performed far better than 5 others before it since 1999.
Yes, I think this is, for me, one of the sweetest stories. And I want to break it down so that people can really understand, because what happens is that we gloss over these things usually without giving it proper attention. And that's the National Assembly giving itself its scorecard. That's the 9th Assembly, which was headed or presided by the Senate President Ahmed Lawan. And in the House, you had Femi Gbajabiamila. Now, they were welcoming members of the 10th Assembly, old and members-elect, in a session at the National Institute of Democratic and Legislative Studies at Ladi Kwali Hall in Abuja. And in this session, the Senate President did state that he claimed that it was a sterling record for the 9th Assembly, that 874 bills were entered into first reading. About 162 got to the third reading, and 104 were consented by the House, which meant that they got presidential assent. Now, he was saying this was far higher than any other assembly in the past, because whilst he was saying that the Ninth Assembly had 104 bills that got presidential assent, the Eighth Assembly had 74, the Seventh Assembly had 60, the Sixth Assembly had 52, and then the Fifth Assembly had 98. So in by way of records, the Ninth Assembly had performed much better. Now, he then went on to address the elephant in the room. That's the rubber stamp assertion that many had tagged this assembly with was not true. That was also concurred and spoken to by the speaker, that's Femi Bajamialia, who said that the rubber stamp assertion was not the right narrative, that what happened was that the assembly worked in concert with the executives to see that they achieved a harmonious relationship to be able to deliver the agenda of the administration. Now, taking a good look at that, the issue here is one, even though this Ninth Assembly had the highest in history, the question is, what was the quality of those bills passed? And when I say quality, you're talking about bills that affect the standard of living and welfare of Nigerian citizens, both home and abroad. And we're discussing about the economic, their way of life and how it has affected them, and the policies and the rules that govern this country. What was the quality of those bills passed? And when you begin to look at that, you begin to see how far did they really go? Can he really claim that they actually delivered? And the first point, we're looking at the constitutional reform. Under the constitutional reform, remember there were about 66 bills that were under review. And at that time, at the end of the day, 44 passed through the House. And I wouldn't exactly blame the House for that, because once the House pushes those bills, they must have 3/4 assent by states' assemblies to be able to be passed into law. And at the end of the day, I think only 18 came out. But out of those 18 that came out, the top 2, or let's even call them top 3 bills that would have had tremendous, right, shift or impact on the Nigerian citizenry were not attended to. One of them was the local government autonomy. We know how much we have lambasted the decrepit and the ineffective state of the local government, simply because they are literally under the influence of the states, right? So they haven't been able to take a life of their own, especially as regards their finances. And the local government, the way our federation is structured, gives the people the closest form of governance. So that big gap that we all experience as citizens was not attended to by this assembly. It was knocked off. Secondly, the gender bills. We're aware of how the women, who make up literally, and I make bold to say, 60% of our population, meaning they're in excess of 110 million, were almost knocked off when they were trying to create bills that would increase their participation and their welfare within the country. It's been proven, it's not in dispute, that when you empower women, you drive your GDP ×4. So why was such an important bill not attended to? Bills not attended to. Finally, we talk about state police. I mean, you can't talk about the Buhari administration without adding insecurity. I mean, even small children who are doing play school know what insecurity means. Literally, what should be going through their head is security, not insecurity. We've even gotten tired of reading all the cases every week, week on week, day on day, of attacks here, bandits here, insurgents here, kidnapping here, and all manner of cases. And the idea was that if the federal government, through the instrumentation of the military and the police, were not sufficient, why not add the state components to it so that we could shore up our numbers? These are quality items that, without them being on the list of what they said they passed, we cannot, in fairness, say that they have done better. It's what matters that counts. Am I right or am I wrong? It's not about running back and forth. And I like to refer to them as fat cats. For all the money that they are paid, how come the bills that mattered most to Nigerians were not attended to? So, well, that report card has been read. It only means that the 10th Assembly has their homework pretty much laid out for them. And we're hoping that Nigerians wake up to the responsibility to put your National Assembly members on their feet. They must not sleep in the next 4 years. If you are not sleeping, the National Assembly members must not sleep because they represent your interest right in the front of government.
All right, let's take a couple of messages from WhatsApp this morning. This is from Timothy, who says, it's not about the number of bills. What is the quality or the impact realized when these bills pass? That's when we have a scorecard. Let's take another one here. And let me see, this is from Pastor. Yeah, this is from Devoe. And it says, good morning. It's good to see and hear that the second and third runners-up in the just concluded elections aren't basing their court grievances on the aspect of winning but calling for an annulment because they feel that ABC Kennedy wasn't qualified in the first place. I thought but former President Obasanjo just stated categorically that article comes from Cameroon.
All right, let's move on to the next story.
That's right. Let's take this from Daily Trust. Now, Kaduna State Governor Malam Nasir El-Rufai has advocated a restructuring of the sharing formula of Nigeria's revenue in favor of the states. Lakunle.
Okay, so my thoughts about this are as follows. One, why is it that my first thought is always a question? Why is it that it's always about the money? If we focus too much, I think that as Nigerians, as Nigerians, individuals, as Nigerians, as a government, I think we focus too much on the money. There's a general perception or there's a general thinking that, okay, so if there's a problem, once just throw money at it, then the problem just will go away. And over time, repeatedly, we have seen that this does not happen. And we can mention many things about us today that speaks to this fact. Now, we speak to today, the states in together get, I think, between 51 and 60% of at FAC every month. So if they want to go to 80%, can they give us a scorecard of what they've done with the one they currently collect to justify that, okay, the money you are collecting today is not enough, that if we give you more, you will do more? That's one part. The other part, and I'll state a specific example, the universal basic education is 100% under the control of the local government and the state government. The local government will handle the primary 1 to primary 6 bits, and primary 1 to GS3. That's what it is, the first 9 years. And state government will handle the second, third year in high school, right? That's the senior secondary bit. Now, with all the monies that is available in UBEC, we can count the number of states that have, in the last 20 years of this democracy, assessed the funding from the federal government to make their UBEC work. Nigeria has the highest number of out-of-school children, as they say, today. So if they want that is within their control, 100%, they have funds to spend on it. They have extra funds to collect from the federal government to add to what they have to spend on it. We are saying that despite that, we have the highest number of out-of-school children. Then how can you then justify that you need more money to do new things? If we are talking about all those things, there are other things that are not on the exclusive list that the federal government deals with. They just remove train, they just remove power, and so on and so forth. So those are the things we should be speaking with, not about the money. When we think of the solution to the problems, we can then worry about where the money will come from. To that extent, I disagree with the governor.
All right, thank you so much, Lakunle and Devoe, for joining us this morning. Thanks for listening, and thank you for your messages as well. Do stay with us. There's a lot more to come on the Smooth Breakfast. Thanks, Lakunle.
Thanks, see ya.
Bye.